welcome back to the Bookworms Buddy. Today I have a duology review. I think it's going to be a duology because it didn't end like there could be anything else. So I'm going to say it's a duology. I was on Amazon and came across the Rune Gate cycle. And the Rune Gate cycle is Rune Gate, and then Chosen is book 2. I read the synopsis of the first one, went to Goodreads and read the synopsis of the first one, and it's described as a mystery. It involves a witch. There's a witch involved. So I'm thinking, well, mystery, that's great for me. And it's free. It was a free book. So I went ahead and downloaded it. I loved them. I loved both books. So let me first just give you a general synopsis of the story. You have Jen and you have Thomas. Jen's an investigator. Thomas is a full-fledged police officer. And then you have Alexandra, or Alex as they call her. Alexandra, they like to refer to as a clairvoyant, but they know she's a witch, and she knows that she's a witch. And Thomas just doesn't believe in magic and, you know, all that stuff. And Jen is she believes a little bit more than Thomas does. Alex had worked with them before, but she had to back out of it because it was just too much for her to handle, and she couldn't do it anymore. There was, you know, all the murder and the terror and the horror and the blood. She couldn't deal with it anymore because she could touch a crime scene and see what happened. But that's not all. She's not your cliche clairvoyant, because she could also see into the person who was killed, what kind of a person they were, how they lived their life, what did they do, and that kind of stuff. She had to be careful of people touching her because all these thoughts and stuff would just flow into her. And her magic was uncontrolled, so she learned to put a wall up to kind of control all of that, but it wasn't, you know, surefire. They pled with her to help them with this serial killer. They've got a serial killer on their hands. She was a little iffy at first, but she finally relented and decided that she would help them. I'm not going to get into what kind of a serial killer this was. He's just a serial killer. She would go to the crime scenes and she would touch the victim, or she would touch something from the crime scene, and she could tell them what happened, but the actual serial killer was kind of shadowed. So she named him Shadow Man, and that's how she relayed him to both Jen and Thomas. Thomas and Alexandra had kind of a thing years ago, so they were a little uppity with each other throughout the book, but, you know, that's to be expected. That's pretty much all I'm going to tell you about the synopsis of this story, because I love the element of surprise. Some of the characters did not expect them. What the author manages to do is he takes this mystery and it gradually turns into fantasy. The second book is more fantasy, and the transition between the two was great. When you get into the second book, the world building was awesome. I loved it. Loved the world building in it. And the way it went from one part to the next part was brilliant. I loved it. If you watch my channel, you know that I cannot do fantasy very well. I have issues with fantasy. And I can do young adult fantasy okay. Adult fantasy, I don't know. I can't absorb it. I can't get into it. I'm not sure what my issue is, but I don't really enjoy it. This book is kind of down the middle. It's kind of in between young adult and adult. So either side can read it. And I enjoyed it. I wasn't confused. I wasn't scratching my head. I wasn't trying to keep control of who did this and who is that or any of that. It just transitioned that well. And like I said, the world building was fantastic. The magic was fantastic. A lot of, you know, witch books, not all of them, but we'll say some of the witch books don't have near as much magic in them as they should. And this book, this duology, is chock full of magic, and I loved it. Chock full of magic. The characters. I loved Alex. I really did love her. Jen, you don't get a whole lot of Jen. She's kind of like in the background. You'll read about her in the first bit of the first book. And then you got Thomas, and I'm kind of on the fence with Thomas. I'm not quite sure how I feel about him. And then the other characters are just unexpected, and I don't want to give that away. I'd love to just talk about them, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to do it. They were all developed really well. We'll just say that. And one of them is my favorite. Even the antagonist. I liked the antagonist. They were developed pretty well. The only issue I had with that was there wasn't enough one-on-one with the antagonist. They would talk about them, but you didn't really get that much of them in the forefront. There is some, but I don't think it was really enough. And I like to be in the mind of our serial killer, and I love to be in the mind of our antagonist and just kind of see what makes them tick. And you just don't get that, really. And that's more so in the second book. So I would have liked to have had them more in the forefront. And also, one other thing that I really didn't like was the fact that, you know, it seemed like anybody could train and learn the magic. And I know, like in Harry Potter, they trained and they learned magic. But it kind of takes the essence away from the magic, about who should be the ones to be able to perform the magic. And it just kind of took a little bit away from it for me, that, you know, it was that easily acquired and you could train and you could do magic. And I don't know, I just kind of didn't like that part of it. But, you know, and that too is mostly in book 2. So I rated Rune Gate 4.5 stars. And then because of these elements that I didn't really like as much, I rated book 2 a 4. Still, they're both fantastic books, and I implore you to read them. Go get Rune Gate, it's free. Try it out. And I can recommend this book to anybody who likes fantasy, young adult or adult, and those of you who like mystery. It reaches a wide array of an audience. I mean, you know, anybody could really enjoy this series. And that's my review, guys, of this duology, and I wanted to share that with you. If you have read this duology, let me know in the comments below. And also, even if you've just read Mark E. Cooper, you can maybe recommend a book to me or another series by him. We'll talk about it either way. Post it in the comments. And that's it, guys. Thanks for staying tuned, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.